Hello and welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 36, a podcast where we discuss books, genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm A.R. DeClerc. That's Paulina Woods over there.
So today we have a book chat, and we are talking about Kate Corcino's Spark Rising. Did I say that right? Okay, Amy is shaking her head. Amy picked this book for review today, so Amy has the awesome duty of reading the blurb.
Okay, so the blurb for Spark Rising. All that's required to ignite a revolution is a single spark rising. 200 years after the cataclysm that annihilated fossil fuels, sparks keep electricity flowing through their control of energy-giving dust. The Council of Nine rebuilt civilization on the back of sparks, offering citizens a comfortable life in a relo-city in exchange for power, particularly over the children able to fuel the future. The strongest of the boys are taken as wards and raised to become elite agents, the Council's enforcers and spies. Strong girls, those who could advance the rapidly evolving matrilineal power, don't exist, not according to the Council. Lena Gracey died as a child, mourned publicly by parents desperate to keep her from the Council. She was raised in hiding until she fled the relo-city for solitary freedom in the desert. Lena lives off the grid, selling her power on the black market. Agent Alex Reyes was honed into a calculating weapon at the Ward's School to do the Council's dirty work. But Alex lives a double life. He's leading the next generation of agents in a secret revolution to destroy those in power from within. The life Lena built to escape her past ends the day Alex arrives looking for a renegade spark. So, okay, and then let me read about the author. Kate Corcino writes new adult speculative fiction. Her debut novel, Spark Rising, placed second in the paranormal, fantasy, and futuristic category of the 2014 Toronto RWA Catherine Award. She has also released Ignition Point, a collection of related short stories set in the same world as the novel. A formal legal videographer, teacher, and law student, Corcino lives and writes in her beloved desert in the southwestern United States. She enjoys life with her family, 3 dogs, and 2 cats.
So we can get into the breakdown of the story in just a second, but I want to know why you picked this book, Amy.
Why did I pick this book? Okay, first of all, I know the author, and when I first became an author, a published author, Kate was one of the people who became kind of like a mentor, person to talk to. And basically, I kind of beta read Spark Rising before it went to be published. And I felt very connected to the book itself. So when it was finally published and I got to read the final draft, I really, really enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed the characters, and I think that Kate's a phenomenal author. So I really wanted to share that with you guys on the podcast and share our thoughts with the people who listen to the podcast, because I think that Kate's had a tough time finding a place to park Spark Rising, genre-wise, because when she wrote it, it was designed to be called science fiction romance, and because of some of the elements of the story that don't quite line up with the word romance, she got a lot of flack and a lot of blowback from people who said that this book isn't a romance and you shouldn't shelve it in romance. And so I really wanted to see how the girls in the podcast felt about the story, and in general, just kind of share it with the world, because I liked it and I enjoyed it when I read it.
Okay, so we can start with doing some discussion about characters. We can talk about Lena first, which is short for Magdalena. I thought that was clever. What did you think of Lena, Amy?
I liked Lena. I'll be honest with you. She's not my favorite character. She had moments where I disliked her quite a bit. I felt like she was very selfish, and I felt like she was very naive about the world and the way the world worked at the beginning of the book. So I had a high expectation of a pretty good large story arc for her to grow past these annoying character traits that she had in the beginning that bothered me. So yeah, I liked her powers and her abilities as a spark. I think it's a very unique perspective on post-apocalyptic, fossil fuel cataclysm, because it takes into account like all the biological evolution of humans, because environmentally things have gone to shit. So yeah, I liked Lena. I thought she's a very, very powerful person, but I feel like she was very naive and very shallow in the beginning. What did you think about her?
I had a really hard time relating. Like, all the elements seemed to be there. She was a lone wolf. She has a tragic past. But I couldn't feel for her. And I can't put a finger on why. I did find her selfish and a little bit naive. But as you said, there's probably a larger like arc throughout the rest of the books. But I had a really hard time liking her, which is a little problematic.
I'll be honest
Paulina?
with you, I didn't like her either. So I mean, it is kind of a problem in some ways, yeah.
Okay, what I did read of the book, she's interesting. I can give you that, but honestly, she didn't grab my attention. She didn't grab my attention. Like, my attention span is, I have to like a character, within her first few chapters. I have to really engage with them, and I just didn't find that connection. If I would have kept reading, maybe, but I didn't connect with her at all. And I just felt like she was like 10 years old, maybe. Just some of the things she was doing, I was like, oh, you're like a kid. So that's my take on her. Sorry.
You don't have to apologize for your opinion. It's fine. So Alex, the love interest. What did you think of Alex, Amy?
I think Alex is super hot, and I enjoyed Alex's character, actually, because when I pictured Alex in my mind, he was very clear. Like, Lena was a little fuzzy, just because there were so many conflicts with her personality, but Alex was like super sharp. Like, he was on the surface like the most calm, like perfectly put together person, like his hair was good, his clothes were clean, everything was pressed, shoes were shiny, drove a fancy car, and he's standing in the desert, like basically waiting on her, chasing her to try to catch her. And you get this later on glimpse into his secret life, his double side. And I thought he was very alluring. I didn't know why he was attracted to her, because she didn't seem like his type, and maybe that's why he was attracted to her. I don't know. Just because I know the author and I've had so many conversations with her about these characters. It's a very common thing that people have. They don't see the spark like between Alex and Lena at first. And so I was kind of the same way. I was really intrigued by him and less by her. So then I was kind of felt like a one-sided relationship for the two of them. But that didn't hurt his appeal to me in any way.
Yeah, I could relate more to Alex than I could with Lena. I think as a character, he was really well-rounded. I just kind of got irritated towards the end that he was so, not indoctrinated, but he was just so mission first, like goal is first, relationship. That was like towards the end, it was just like irritating, and I kind of got the feeling where the end of the story was going. So I was kind of prepared, but I was like, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't want to say man up, but like, that was disappointing in his character, that he was just like, oh, we're gonna leave it here and mission first, and I'm like, yeah, it's important because it's a dystopian like overthrow plot thingy. But I was like, you were so perfect, and then you fucked it up. P, what did you think?
So honestly, I have no opinion on him. I'm not. Yeah, nothing. I'm not being like weird about it. I mean, I got to the part where he was like waiting for her. This how waiting for her, and I was just like, this douche. He's a douche. And so I got a little bit past that, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Neither one of the main characters was my favorite character from this book. My favorite character is Thomas, and Thomas was my favorite character and has been my favorite character through all of the books. He is Alex's best friend, and he is the real like leader of the revolution or whatever, and he's a real jerk. And you think Alex is like indoctrinated into this belief that this is the most important thing in the world, but Thomas is like so overboard with his, you know, like zealous, destroy the Council of Nine, like, but I really wanted him to have a love interest and to like have to choose between this really important, you know, journey that he's been on and this person that he loves. And that doesn't happen in this book, obviously, but I think one thing that has occurred to me when you guys were talking about how you feel about the book is you're coming at this from a romance reader perspective, and this is part of the problem. The story is not a romance. I don't read this story like a romance. I read this story like a post-apocalyptic urban fiction. I did not expect Lena and Alex to be together at the end of the book. If you expected a happily ever after and a move on to the next story to further the plot line with a new couple, it wasn't coming, and that's where readers get disappointed, I think.
Right.
Because it's a slow burn. It is a romance, but it's a slow burn romance. So I think when she started shelving it in romance, that's where we really started to get some blowback, because everybody felt the same way that you guys did, which is, you know, like, this story's supposed to focus on these characters, and they're supposed to be more clearly drawn, and they're supposed to have, you know, this really hot sexual tension and romance between the two of them, and they don't. And that's because I don't think the story is about the characters. I think the story is about the world. In my opinion, the world building is the main character of this.
Right, but if you're going to shelve it in romance, you need that happily ever after. We've had this conversation before. It's fine if you have romance in the sci-fi, but if you don't have that happily ever after and you stick it in the romance category, the reader is not going to have their expectations met, and they're going to be angry at the end because they're going to feel cheated in some capacity.
And I don't think it's shelved in romance anymore. I think her original like heart was to go for the romance. You know, like, she was like, oh, my book is a romance. But then she got a lot of it's science fiction, it's futuristic, it's romantic, but it's not a romance. And I think that if you come at it with a romance reader's perspective, like we all do when we read it, that's why I was really interested to see how you guys got it, because that's how it came across to me when I read it too, is that this isn't a romance. This is a romantic science fiction novel.
If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it lists all the categories, and she still has it in romance sci-fi.
Yeah, and it really shouldn't be there. And I've had this discussion with her before, and I like to color outside the lines, and I don't like to like draw boundaries for anything. But I think that's why people have the feelings about it that they do, is because that's not what they expect when they pick up this book from romance.
Right. Right. So I liked. There was another character that we haven't mentioned named Jackson, and I liked Jackson. He was actually Lena's same age, where Alex was a little bit, well, quite a bit older, but didn't look it. And I thought that was kind of interesting, this like love triangle-ish thingy. I think because I'm coming at it from a romance author perspective, I think it could have been done more. There could have been fight over it. And that was where, at the end of the book, I was kind of let down. I'm like, okay, there's no There's no love conquers all here.
If you want the fight, then you need to read the next book. Because in Spark Awakening, that's where Jackson and Lena's connection versus Alex and Lena's connection. It's kind of like a test, and there are more trials and tribulations for I would call them a threesome, basically, of main characters. But she introduces so many characters, especially in the second book, because the fact that the Spark girls aren't supposed to exist, it's like, well, where the heck do they go? Like in Spark Awakening, you find out what's happening to all these girls, and it becomes very much like a story about them, even more than about the revolution or about Lena or about Alex. And so that's why, I mean, I think it's a fabulous series and I love it, and it is for what it is. But if you're reading it from a romance reader's perspective, I don't think you're going to be satisfied.
Right. So, do we want to talk about setting? I thought that was really well done. I really liked the idea that all electricity just ended, and they explain why they happened, and then they're using electricity produced by humans to make the entire world work. I thought that was really clever. And then the description of what the dust was and what it actually does and how it all works, I kind of sat there and thought, okay, so it's the force explained by midichlorians. Am I the only one that thought about that? You've got this magical ability, and then suddenly, like later, like, oh, it's midichlorians, it's science. Oh.
It's always science. There's no such thing as magic. There's only science. Do you not know this?
I'm a fantasy writer. That's my excuse. But what did you think about the setting?
I like the setting. I think it was very cleverly done. Right at the time that this book came out, there was a show on TV called Revolution. Do you remember seeing that? It was the end of fossil fuels and no electricity, and it was because of all these little nanites that they released into the air. And so it was very, very, very similar. And the author and I actually had this conversation. She's like, oh my God, this show just started. It's so much like my book. Are people going to think I, stole the idea from this show? And I said, no, because the show's going to be canceled in like a season. So it's not going to matter. But yeah, I thought it was very clever. I thought the science was interesting. I liked the grounding, like how you built up so much like electrical energy inside your body that you had to like ground yourself into the ground, like release it into the dirt. So I did like that. And I liked the idea that the females were more powerful than the males, and that caused an issue for the political setting, I guess, because they were using she almost used it as a message for feminism, almost like she didn't intend it that way, but you kind of get it that way, which is, anytime that a woman is stronger than a man, then they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that that their power is protected. And there are some really good villains that are introduced, but more towards the end of this book and then later on in the series, because I like a good bad guy. And there's some really like nasty bad guys that are introduced that I really enjoyed. But and I think that even rounds out the world building even more. So when you start introducing all these factions, because they have the world divided into these sections, and it's all different based on which section you go to. And so when you start fleshing out each section and you get to see like who's the leader of this section and this is what his people are like. And so, yeah, I think she did a really good job of setting. And I think, like I said, even more than the characters, even more than the romance or the story, I think the world itself is the main point.
Paulina, did you have any comments on setting?
Not really. Can Can I just do an overall and then I'll just be quiet for the rest of the time?
Yeah, I think we're to the point where we can do like overall thoughts.
Okay. So as I'm reading this story, I'm like, oh, this would be a cool movie. And then I stopped. Because, okay, I love the Harry Potter movies. I love the what is it? The, not showrunner, the Blaze Runners. I like all of these movies, but I refuse to read the books. And that's kind of like what this book kind of gave me. I would love to watch these movies. Like, I would love to watch a 3-hour movie on the first book. I just don't want to read it. So if it's ever a movie, I'll be like first in line to here, take my money. I think because the fact there's just so much going on that my brain is like, nah, I'd rather see it happen. You know, I think it'd be kind of cool to see half of what she was describing actually happen. So personally, if a movie ever comes out with these books, I'll be first in line because there'll be amazing movies. So yeah, that was my whole take on it, was make it a movie and I'll watch it.
Okay. I liked it, but it lost my attention fast. There was a lot of description of things that could have been shortened up or even omitted that I didn't really need to know. It didn't add to the, I don't know, ambiance of the room. It was like the author didn't trust the reader to fill in the gaps, so she explained everything. And that really slowed down the pace for me. So, like, when I picked it up and I was reading, I would keep turning pages, but, like, to get to pick it up, that was kind of the problem. Like, because it didn't relate to Lena, and I think she had more screen time than Alex, if I'm remembering right. You know, so you've got this character that's not quite likable, kind of selfish, and a pace that's slow. I don't know. If we wanted to give it a star rating, I would probably give it a 3 because technically it's written well. But like I said, I don't think the author trusted the reader enough to leave out certain details, and then that made everything slow down. So that's my thought. And Amy?
Well, I like this. I like this book. I like this series. I like the style of the writing, which is not necessarily the love or hate of the description and all of that. But I think if I was going to suggest this book, and this was kind of an experiment because I wanted to see how you guys kind of reacted to it, but if I was going to suggest this book to a group of people and I had romance readers on the left-hand side of the room and science fiction readers on the right-hand side of the room, I would tell the science fiction readers to read this book. It has more hard science fiction. It has more description. It has more political intrigue. So even people who like to read science fiction with military or political, ties, I think they would appreciate it. I'm not sure romance readers are going to feel satisfied. And I think they're going to get lost because what they're looking for is character, connection, story, happy ever after. And that's not what this book gives. And so if you go into it looking for those things and it's not there, then you're just like, this is not what I want to read. But I think science fiction readers would appreciate it. I think people who enjoy hard sci-fi with romantic elements are going to find it satisfying.
Yeah,
because it's very complicated.
Well, I was able to follow along with everything, but I think that I was coming to it from a romance perspective, and they are very fast-paced, and they're meant to be emotionally gripping, and that wasn't this book, and that's fine. I think sci-fi with romantic elements is better for this book. And like I said, it's technically written well, and I think if I was more of a sci-fi person versus romance, my star rating would be higher. But that's what I think the difference was.
Yeah, I agree, and I kind of think that. I mean, I think she's a spectacular author. I've read some other things that she's written that are shorter, and less complicated. I just think that maybe when people get this from the romance section, that they're going to be a little bit dissatisfied. But I mean, it's one of my favorite series. So if people like science fiction and you're listening to the podcast, pick it up. Or if you're just interested and you want to see what we're all complaining about, pick it up and read it. You never know.
Yeah, if you've read it, you can leave a comment on our blog. It's focusonfantasyromance.wordpress.com. If you're interested, I'll have a link in the comments. But if anyone else has anything to say, I can wrap it up. Nope. Okay. Thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, please like, comment, and share. This has been episode number 36. We were discussing Spark Rising by Kate Corcino. Have a good night.
Good night.